Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're glad that you're here today. If you are hearing my voice from the pray one end, so come on in now. It's time to be prepared to start. 11 o'clock service. Today is the fourth Sunday of Advent, known as Christmas Sunday, Sunday before Christmas. So we got to celebrate that. And over the past weeks, we've been using the Advent here to help us in our preparation for Christmas. So on this fourth Sunday of Advent, as we think about the coming of Jesus Christ, we light the candle of love. How great is love the Father has lavished on us. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. This is how God showed us his love. He sent his one and only Son to the world by him. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, you also must love one another. All men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Today we are grateful to thank Andrew and Jessica Wetherill and their family for being part of today's lighting of the Advent candles. We light all 4 candles today in preparation for Christmas Eve, when we light also the center candle that reminds us of Jesus and his coming. So will you join me for a word of prayer as we begin this morning? Father, we thank you for this day, for this time, for this hour that's unlike any other hour inside of our week. We would pray that you would meet us here, that as we sing praises to you, that you would receive our worship, Lord, but also that you would have the opportunity to speak and to challenge, to meet us even inside of this morning. We pray your blessing upon all that's said, all that's done. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Let's stand together. It's great to see you all here today. You know, we get a chance one time a year to worship with songs that we know from our childhood, Christmas carols. And if I can have just a little bit more on this mic, thank you. We're just so blessed to be able to come into this place and to worship a God freely and to remember what God did by sending his Son. So as we sing these words, let's use them as a reminder of what he did for us by sending his Son on this day. Let's sing together. It came upon a midnight wind, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their hearts of gold. He saw sometimes you come to church and you just say, well, this is a good time. We're going to sing Christmas carols that we know. And then we start doing this. And we ask you, could you, if you can you flick, please, on 2 and 4 and not 1 and 3. And then we add. Yeah, it is a song you know. Here we go. We'd like to take a moment and just give somebody near you a hug. In fact, get out of your aisle and tell them how glad you are that they're here today.
as Christmas comes up in just a few days here, we just have a few announcements of what is going on here at the church. So coming up, we have our Christmas Eve services. We have 3 of them. The first one will be at 5, and that'll be our children and family service. So if you're interested in that, some of the children will be singing in the service during that. And so that's a great way to come out and support them, especially if you have a family. It'll be very welcoming to them as well. And then at 7 p.m. in the FLC as well, we have our contemporary candlelight service. And at 11 p.m. we have our traditional candlelight service over in the sanctuary. So if you're interested in any of those, we look forward to seeing you on Christmas Eve, as that's a great way to celebrate and get ready for Christmas coming the next day. After that, we have our New Year's Eve communion open house, and that'll be in the sanctuary. So if you're interested in taking communion and entering 2020 in a time of prayer, that's a great way to do that. That'll be from 5 to 8 p.m. over in the sanctuary. My time slot is from 6 to 7, so if you'd like to avoid me, you can do that as well. Or if you'd like to come and see me, I'll never know either way. So that option is there for that. And lastly, we want to thank everybody who brought in the angel tree gifts. We had 130 food boxes and 200 presents that were given out. We do have a photo, I believe, here of all the tables that set up, but of course at 11 you guys were able to see that yourselves when you came into service a few weeks ago. And so social concerns, of course, we'd like to extend a thank you to everybody that helped out with that, and then of course even going back to Thanksgiving with those food boxes as well. And lastly, this Sunday is actually Charlie's last Sunday leading us in worship, being a part of that. And so we had a reception at 10 to thank him and Holly for all their time here. But if you weren't able to make it to that, of course you can catch them after service and just kind of thank them and wish them their best moving forward. But other than that, I would like to invite our ushers forward as we continue our worship service.
Remember Christ our
guys can have a seat. We're going to sing one more song before the prayer. And a lot of us take a look at the nativity scene. That's something that takes place in our house. It's part of our decorations. Or we go to see a live nativity. But what if we had the opportunity to be the ones who come to the baby Jesus and lay our adoration, and we sing hallelujah to Christ who was born, who was the Son of God? What if we are the ones in this service today that rather than just sing words and notes, we actually lay it out there that this is what we're singing. We're singing hallelujah to the Christ who was born. We're going to sing
corporately, there's so much going on in this week. A lot of chaos, a lot of family. We just want to lift up all those things going on today and this week, and that we can just kind of ease into it and remember why we do it. So would you just go with me in prayer together? Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for this morning, that we can come before you and sing hallelujah to the highest name of all. And in this season, in this week, through the chaos and the hustle, we can remember why we come to celebrate it all. Why we go tell it on the mountain. The birth of the Christ child to come and save the world. God, we thank you. We thank you for that love that you showed to us. Now for some and for many, Christmas is a painful time and a struggle. And God, in that we lift those to you. That you would have your way, have your will. That you would move in the midst of all the pain. God, we thank you that you came. And we ask that all that we do in this week and the weeks to come, and all we say, all we do, would bring glory to your name. God, be with us this week. Be with us today. That we would hear the message that you've given to Pastor Mike this morning. That we would see you in a new way, in a fresh way. God, we thank you for this morning. And it's in your name. Amen.
So one of the ways that we've been thinking about Advent, and by the way, Advent is a word that has been used down through the history of the church that simply means coming or the arrival of Jesus on the page of history. And the church has celebrated Advent for a couple reasons. One, it allows us to look back and to place ourselves in the context of those that for centuries look forward to the coming of a Messiah. Look forward to the coming of that God would send a messenger, that God would send an intervener, that God would send a mediator, that God would send a leader, someone who would rise up to deliver them from enemies, foreign as well as corruption and moving away from God internally. That the cry of the people was that God would intervene, that God would send somebody, the Messiah, the chosen one, the anointed one. And so we step back into that and remember. And the idea that we wait along with those who waited. But the other reason that the church has always looked towards the idea of Advent is that we also await a second coming. The fact that God arrived for the first time on the page of history, and in fact all of our calendars have been reoriented to assume that date. We're now in the year of our Lord, 2019, and so roughly 2000 years ago was when we also look forward to the fact that he is coming again, that he will return to receive us, looking back in celebration, but also looking ahead in anticipation. And so that's really what Advent is, where we spend several weeks about that, and I live that out in front of our lives. We can look back over our souls, appreciation, thanksgiving, gratitude for the things that God has done, remember the journey that He brought us on, and yet also look ahead that we will instantly do whether it's for another day, another month, or whether it's awaits that final redemptive act. Come again that second time, all time, all pain, all brokenness, gone. We await that second time. So we've been thinking about that. One is waiting, expectation, long. Second is the aspect of life. You cannot celebrate Christmas without life. Whether it's stars at the top of the light or around the or it's like itself, lights seem to adorn that darkest time of the year. Celebrate the fact that light shows up and makes a difference. Just like on the page of history, that darkest time, light showed up. And so we've been thinking for the past couple of weeks that Jesus said, I am the light of the world. That God gave the gospel is the light of the world, dark, not able to be the thought about those concepts of those wonderful time of the year now. Like, live a lot of darkness while we celebrate light. And the reality is, we can't cultivate the very act of trying to do that. It undoes itself. And just say, all right, all the chaos is going on, but somehow I'm just going to get to my happy place and everything's going to be okay. But the reality is, we're right in the middle of that broken, chaotic, crazy, the complicated, fill in the blank of wherever it is that you are. Second week, we stepped into Isaiah and read just a very familiar prophecy. Those that were walked in darkness, light. Those who walked in the land of gloomy, light has dawned. And in fact, there's going to be one who's sent, and his name is going to be Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. Pointed to that fact that that's what God looks like in the face of Jesus. Wonderful Counselor, he's close and he's near. Mighty God, it's God himself who showed up for you. Everlasting, there's no beginning, no end. He is, and he's Father. And the Prince of Peace, the one who's come to bring peace inside of our lives. And so as we've looked at this idea of light and what it means to wait, we then went last week and thought about Simeon, one who was righteous and devout, and waited, and waited, and waited. And he believed that he would see, and he believed that God told him that he would see the Messiah, the chosen one, before he died. And so there he is, this old man sitting in the temple and gets the chance to hold Jesus. And again, his language is this baby. Again, the one that the Jews have been waiting for. He's righteous and devout. He's in the middle of the temple, and yet he says, this one's going to be a light even for the Gentiles, a light for all people. So we've been reminded that you cannot celebrate Christmas without lights, without this idea of waiting and anticipation and longing. Let me tell you this, and I'll speak mostly to the guys in here, but it probably applies to everybody a little bit. The fact that Advent is about waiting does not mean that you have that much longer that you can wait before starting your Christmas shopping. Okay, you have about 48 hours, and so the waiting is about to be met with doom and gloom and darkness inside of your life if you don't respond to the challenge that's in front of you. But inside of that, there is something about this waiting thing. None of us like to wait. None of us really choose to wait. And so, again, whether it is that you are waiting for God to move in a very specific circumstance that may even be complete today or tomorrow or next week, or whether you've been waiting and longing through and expecting for God to move inside of something that is big and huge and you wonder if it'll ever happen, there's something we can identify with in the process of this thing called Advent. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor, and he was imprisoned by Adolf Hitler during World War II. He wrote a series of letters home and, to his fiancée, to his parents, a few other places, and the ones particularly about Christmas were collected and put into a book called God in the Manger. And it was one of the phrases that he used, God in the Manger. And so I stumbled across, as I was reading this, there's a powerful metaphor of what this looks like. Bonhoeffer, who's in prison in a German prison camp, says a prison cell in which one waits, hopes, and is completely dependent on the fact that the door of freedom has to be opened from the outside is not a bad picture of Advent. And so regardless of the circumstances we're in, Bonhoeffer points to the fact that there is something about when you realize that you are stuck and you are waiting and you're expecting and you're longing for something, but you cannot open the door yourself. You don't have the right key, you don't have the right combination, you are utterly dependent upon somebody from the outside opening the door. Is a picture of Advent. Now, none of us find ourselves in the physical predicament as Bonhoeffer, but yet I think we understand a little bit of what that's like. That spiritually, sometimes medically, sometimes relationally, sometimes in the circumstances of our lives and in our families and in our past and in the things we feel like we are trapped inside and we're waiting for somebody to come along with the key. Bonhoeffer says it's inside of that circumstance, specifically for him, literal imprisonment, that he begins to learn more about what God does, what God has done, what God is doing, and what God will do. He then goes on a little bit later to say this, that Advent creates people, new people. And that doesn't just apply to Jesus 2,000 years ago, but Advent is still about the aspect that God is creating something new in you and something new inside of me that we can't comprehend. So it's interesting that when you look at the ancient artwork about Christmas, the presence of light and the presence of darkness. Normally there's shadows all around, but where there is Jesus, there is a halo, where there's a beam of light, where somehow things are lit up, even if nothing else but the baby Jesus, and in some cases, particularly Roman Catholic background, his mother Mary, but there's very little light, but it's concentrated on the Christ child. And so we wait for light. Christmas is all about what God has done. Christmas is all about what God is doing now and who God is and who God desires to be and what he desires to do inside of our lives to do not just that which we want, but even deeper, that which we truly need. What he set about to accomplish inside of our lives. Christmas is God from the outside in opening the door and unleashing light to the world, saying this is exactly what you've been waiting and hoping for. Christmas is God opening the door to your life and my life and unleashing light and saying this is what you've been longing for and hoping for and exactly what you need. Christmas means we're no longer the same because the fact that he has come. One of the popular carols, Hark the Herald Angels Sing by Charles Wesley, and I think it's the third verse, has this to say: light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die. Born to raise the sons of earth and born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing glory to the newborn king. And inside of that, hark the herald is this idea that he's come to bring light and life and that things look different. Not only in his first coming, but in his second coming of what's going to take place inside of our lives. Now the second verse that you just saw comes from another hymn, and it's the hymn And Can It Be? In the third verse, Charles Wesley again picks up this similar kind of language. And he says, long my imprisoned spirit lay, fast bound in sin and nature's night. Thine eye diffused a quickening ray, a life-giving ray. I woke, the dungeon flamed with light. My chains fell off, my heart was free. I rose, went forth, and followed thee. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? Light is powerful. Expectant light. Hoped for over years and circumstances and situations, light. We've talked about what it means to walk through dark days, what it means to wait and to expect. But there's also this idea that the future is bright, not because what lies inside of you or what lies inside of me, but because of the one who intervenes. One more passage for you out of the Old Testament before we move on, particularly on Christmas Eve, and read the Christmas story together. This is in Isaiah chapter 60. Now, if you've read through Isaiah, you know how difficult the book of Isaiah is. 60-some chapters, 66 chapters to try to get through and If you've ever read the Bible through in a year, you probably bogged down at some point in Isaiah. We were all the way back in chapters 9, 10, and 11 previously. This is some 40 chapters later, almost 50 chapters later, we come upon these words that, again, remember when we talked about this, that inside of prophecy there was what's taking place now and then what's pointing to the coming of Jesus, what's pointing to his second coming, and sometimes we don't see all those peaks as distinct. But for Isaiah, as he writes, there are some things that would have been taken place and accomplished right there inside of his lifetime, and some things the people of God were to wait centuries for. And so we come to near the end of the book. And Isaiah says this in chapter 60, beginning with verse number 1. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over all the people. But the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look about you. All assemble and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are carried on the hip. Then you will look and be radiant. Your heart will throb and swell with joy. The wealth on the seas will be brought to you. To you the riches of the nations will come. Herds of camels will cover your land, young camels of Midian and Ephah. And all from Sheba will come bearing gold and incense and proclaiming the praise of the Lord. And so you probably hear inside of that aspects of the Christmas story. There's a reference to gold and incense. Somehow Isaiah must have forgot about including myrrh in there, but we'll give him a break. It was about 700 years before Jesus came. So, we'll cut him a little bit of slack there. But this idea that the coming of Jesus was not just a localized event, but it had cosmic implications. And what would take place then in the greatness of a king who would come, what that meant then for the surrounding area, but even for surrounding generations and for years to come. Isaiah points to a day, and this is, again, in chapter 60. He has written 60 chapters, and there's still more to go about what God is going to do inside of that day and age, but ultimately in Jesus, and even finally inside of his second coming, to bring restoration and redemption and hope. And he says, arise, shine, for the glory of the Lord is upon you. And do you know that scholars, when they write about Isaiah chapter 60, they're divided on whether or not it's all about the Messiah, or if it's about the people of God that are being restored and brought home. And so as we read that, we'll read it again in a few moments, but as you read, there are probably things that pop out and say, that's about Jesus, but that seems to be about a group of people. This seems to be about what God has done. This seems to be about God himself. And scholars seem divided, but I wonder if there's an aspect where both are taking place. That the one who has been sent, the one who comes to intervene and to redeem, also does in such a way that the people who follow them begin to look like him. That what the Messiah is going to do is not just to step in and fix everything and then walk away, but to bring in and to bring forth a new way, a new pattern, a new ethos, a new statement then of how we live and act as the people of God. So that the idea then that Christmas is not just something you receive, you become a conduit of Christmas. Christmas is something then that you transmit, that you become a bearer of everywhere that you go. Not just to ask somebody, have you celebrated Christmas, but to help them experience Christmas, that you are somebody that brings Christmas to the people around you. And so what follows inside of Isaiah chapter 60, I think we see inside of Luke chapter 2 and Matthew chapter 2. The first is that there is great joy. There is great joy. When you read this, there is a joyousness. Arise, shine, for your light has come. And there's joy inside of that passage about, that moment, that people are going to be drawn to you. That there's an overwhelming sense that your hearts will throb and swell with joy. That it's overflowing, it's contagious. It's on display for all to see. When I think about this, I think about the shepherds who you would not have thought about as joyful people, just kind of doing their job, and yet the word that comes to them is, I bring you good news of great joy that'll be for all the people, including you guys. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. You're going to go and you're going to find them, and you're going to be the first non-family witnesses to the greatest act in human history. And so they go and they find the baby and his mother and his father, just as it had been said. Then it goes on and it says that filled with joy overflowing, they rejoiced and glorifying and praising God for all that they had seen and all that they had heard. The birth of one child transformed a hillside from just another night at the office taking care of the sheep to rejoicing and praising God for all that they had seen and all that they had heard. And so it reminds me then that Christmas should bring forth joy. When you encounter Jesus, it should do something to produce joy inside of who you are. Now, we don't have time, but there's a difference between joy and happiness might come and go based on the circumstances of your life, but joy can persist and remains, and it's like a well that never runs dry, that continues to fill and prompt attitudes and perspective, and even sometimes well-being inside of you, that there can be joy even when there's not happiness. The problem is sometimes we who should be the most joyous people in all of the world do not always represent that to the world around us. Because we sometimes feel like we are swimming cross-culturally and life is hard. And so instead of a smile, it's easier for us to wear a frown. We sometimes, begin to struggle and get involved with the world around us. We realize that the way in which people around us are living is not the way we want to live, and so there's a scowl that comes on our face. We've even said before sometimes that we are most happy inside of our culture when we're mad about something. We live in a social media culture, and so you can just make a post, and it seems like there is much more sarcasm and unhappiness and hatred and finger-pointing and complaining, and you can fill in whatever other negative words you want, than there is joy. I'm not saying if you're a Christian, put on a happy face and smile, because after all, God loves me and everything's fine, and, I just wrecked my car, but who cares? God is good. It's not pretend joy, but it's joy that says, regardless of the circumstances, there is something within me that says, I know what is most important and who's with me inside of all situations, so there can be joy despite what is taking place all around me. And I wonder if just one of the reasons that a world around us finds Christianity non-compelling or non-attractive is because they look at the lives of Christians and say there's not anything compelling or attractive about that. They're living the same way I am, and they supposedly found the one who's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I'll take my chances on my own. And again, I don't know what the challenge is there. It's not just put on a happy face, but I wonder if it's, have we discovered, and maybe Christmas is the perfect opportunity to rediscover the joy that comes with the fact that God is, and God is here, and God is near, and God is active, and God is with us. And if so, then whatever I face today pales in comparison to that reality that is true about me. There's great joy. The second thing I read out of Isaiah chapter 60, and it's taken place as a result of everything else that's going on, is that there's a call to action in light of who God is and what God has done. There's a call to action that nations are going to gather and people are going to come and all this flurry of activity as a response to the one who is. And I think about this in regard to Mary. That Mary at first was troubled by the angel's word to her, and she pondered it in her heart. And then eventually her prayer was, may it be just as you have said, I am the Lord's servant. You know what that meant for Mary. Over the next 9 months, over the next 30-some years, the pain, the difficulty, the heartache, at times the lack of understanding, even just the intimidation of raising the Son of God. Yet her prayer was simply, I don't know what I'm getting into, what it's going to entail, how it's going to end, but I am your servant. May your will be done. We could debate whether or not Jesus had to learn anything from Mary. After all, he was the Son of God, right? But he was fully God and he was fully man. I wonder if when it comes to his last evening before the cross and he's in the garden and amidst struggle about what was going to come next, his prayer was simply, not my will, but your will be done. I wonder if he learned that from his mom. I wonder if he heard those stories over and over again. That even his prayer in his darkest hour would be, not my will, but your will. Is God calling you to do anything this Christmas? And I don't know what that is, but I know that you're going to enter into some difficult conversations. You're going to be confronted maybe with some painful memories. Maybe there's something that God's laying upon your heart, but you've been resistant to. But I just simply want to say this, that Christmas is not just a feel-good story, but it comes with it some implication for action of how we live out our lives in regard to who he is and what he's done and what that means and what that implies then for you and for me. The third goes along with that. I think there's a call to giving and to gratitude. That right away that there's wealth brought and there's, everything seems to gather and there's cattle and there's wealth and all these things come to the one who is indeed the Messiah, the messenger of God. And the parallel here, I think is obviously the wise men. In fact, this prophecy has been linked to that in gold and incense that they bring. As they traveled for hundreds of miles in search of truth, they did not come empty-handed. They came with an offering. Now, at this time, I could tell you about how the church is doing, and we're going to take up another offering, and end of the year giving, and IRS things, and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is it's not about the church's needs or about what you should do, except the fact that, just to remind you, that Christmas is not your birthday. You should give wonderful gifts. You should celebrate the people that are around you. I hope that you get everything that you ask for. But the reality is, what have you brought to Jesus? Maybe it's a monetary gift. Maybe it's some other aspect of just opening your life or committing to something that he's been laying on your heart. Maybe it attaches to the call to action. But I think Christmas is something that in light of what he has done, we don't come empty-handed. And yes, we give to the people around us, but I think also at times there's an opportunity to give something back to God for all that he's done for you. And all these things, there's one other not positive but kind of a negative qualifier that I think we also see in here, that inside of all this that's going on, and the nations and the wealth and everything that's gathered and a new light in the midst of darkness, it's also possible, Isaiah will go on to say, it's possible to miss it. That you could be around and see all these things that are taking place and miss why it took place. You could be a townsperson in Bethlehem and just be complaining about all the traffic because of the census. You could be a traveler who's come down of the household and lineage of David and just be tunnel vision to what you need to get done and what you need to do and to get out of Bethlehem. You could be a scribe or a Pharisee inside of Jerusalem and have all the intellectual knowledge and know the story inside and out that it keeps you from experiencing it. Or you could be Herod, somebody that's just consumed with his own agenda. Inside of all those, you could be somebody who's close to Jesus and yet miss him. And I think that danger is not as present for the non-Christian as for the Christian. Because if you're the non-Christian and you've never experienced it, you're not necessarily missing it, you just haven't experienced it yet. But I think the danger sometimes is for us, we know the story so well. We've heard about great joy and a call to action and wise men and shepherds and Mary and Bethlehem, and we've heard all these things, and it's possible to miss what he has for us this year. See, I think that's why we have Advent every year. That's why we celebrate Christmas every year. That's why we celebrate Easter every year. Because we need to be reminded of what's taken place, but we also need to renew what that means then for me and how I live. We need that reminder. And so scholars argue, is Isaiah 60 about the restored people of God, or is it a description of the Messiah? I think it's both. And I want to read it for you again. Rise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. You see, darkness covers the land, and thick darkness is over all the people. But the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift your eyes and look about you. All assemble and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are carried on the hip. Then you will look, and it will be radiant, and your heart will throb and swell with joy. The wealth on the seas will be brought to you. To the riches of the nations will come. Herds of camels will cover your land, young camels of Midian and Ephah. And all people will come bearing gold and incense and proclaiming the praise of the Lord. You see, he is light, but you are also called. Nations are gathered to him, but he also says that you are going to be a light to the nations to make his kingdom known. He's the bringer of joy, but you become a bearer of joy to the places where you go. You are more than a recipient of Christmas. You are a conduit of Christmas. You are a carrier of Christmas. You are someone who takes Christmas with you even to the dark. Next couple days, make food, watch movies, collect that. In the midst of all of that, there pain or to the places you go. You bring joy. Follow after that, God, what would you have me do and be inside of this situation where I'm at right now? You've been blessed. Not so close to the story that he has for us this year. So arise, shine. Light come. The glory of the Lord is upon you. Dark out there in the back of our area, thick, dark out. Carrying forth the light. God come to make not bear Christmas to the places that you go. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you today for a powerful reminder of we thank you today for Christmas. We thank you for Emmanuel, God with us. Lord, there are places where we wait for the we wait for the conclusions and the answer. Next step. Situation we feel like we're in prison and the door has to be opened out front. Father, you have also done something out of our heart. Not just for us. You called us there. Next couple of days, give us joy inside our heart. Keep our heart with action. Lord, would you allow us to all that we have before you to take our lives and all that we have. God, I pray for the next 8 hours. Amidst all This week, you take Christmas with you wherever you go. Even yet, we're still people who wait. Long. Hope. Expect. Not because everything is done enough. We are and we also think. Father, I pray that you would go with us this week. You would help us not to miss what you have. Also, you would help us to be a testimony. One who points to the fact that we can make a difference out of our lives. Come and all things. Go with us this week. Right, worship who you are. Pray for time together. Pray for much prosperity together. Powerful, but also majesty, all God's faith. And Merry Christmas. Have a great week. We'll see you back here on Tuesday, 5 o'clock kids service, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock.